So if I was starting today as a new solo, I would do
entrepreneurial aspect.
Have to change the way they're practicing.
Having a leader
Analyze that they've done it earlier.
To help young lawyers.
Starting a small
what it
firm.
means to be fulfilled.
Make it easy to work with your clients.
New approach, new tools, new mindset, new solo.
And it's making that leap.
Hello and welcome to New Solo on Legal Talk Network. I'm Adriana Linares, a legal technology trainer and consultant. I help lawyers and law firms use technology better. I want to thank our partners in developing the New Solo First Flight series for solo attorneys presented by ALPS Insurance. They're interested in helping solos and small firms get the best start to their practices. We curated the best 12 episodes for new solos in partnerships with ALPS. Today, we're highlighting a portion of an episode with Kim Felton, who runs her own immigration practice and a consulting firm helping other lawyers streamline their operations. There are some good tips in here. We hope the discussion gives you a fresh way to think about your case management. Stay through to the end when I sit down with Laine from ALPS Insurance. We'll get into tapping your project management mindset for running your cases so you can avoid the most common and most avoidable reason for malpractice, how the pressures of family life create opportunities and present some risks to firms like yours. Rio and I discuss tactics for creating a work environment where your employees won't want to sue you. And be thoughtful about your pro bono work. It still has risks. And now my interview with Kim Felton, who runs a solo immigration firm in New York State and also shares her tools for managing cases with other attorneys. Kim, I don't know how old you are, but I'm going to call you a young attorney if that's okay.
Sure.
That went through law school and had her trials and tribulations, found out she was going to become a mother during law school, got out of law school, and then just decided there had to be a better way, which I'm pulling that quote from one of Kim's articles that I read about finding balance in her life, creating a better law practice, and then finding ways to actually help other attorneys in as much as she helps her immigration clients with their legal needs. So Kim, it's so nice to meet you. Thanks for coming on today. Give us real quick the tweet size summary of how Kim Felton got to Onward Immigration.
Okay. I had my first son during law school. I found out I was going to have my second son right before I graduated law school. I needed a job, couldn't get a job because I was visibly pregnant, and I needed money. So I started doing contract work, which turned into figuring out how the legal profession is not efficient and how I cannot function in that environment. So taking control of that, I want to teach other lawyers how to be efficient, how to streamline their practice, and how to figure out where they don't have to choose between their families and their careers. So I did innovation litigation to offer brief writing services so that I could take some of that workload, and then offer consulting to teach them how to build that in themselves, which then showed me there was even more things about the legal practice I didn't like. And being, the control freak that I am, I decided I was going to open my own practice and do things my way.
And Kim, the article that I mentioned, A Better Way, I saw it on Above the Law, but what was the full title for that so people can Google it?
It is called A Better Way, How Motherhood Changed My Perspective of the Legal Field and What I'm Doing to Change It.
So I read a little bit on your background, and I know that was a struggle for you to, and not necessarily a bad struggle, but you took on a lot at that time. What kind of advice do you have with going through that other than don't give up and go with your gut?
Oh, you can't just not give up. You have to figure out a way not to give up. So it all started coming together in the second part of my first year. First semester was like a hardcore in the books, head down, nothing else mattered. And it was not good for my mental health. And so it was a nice breath of fresh air to be able to snap out of that and come back to something in real life. I found out I was having my oldest son in April of 2016. After the initial excitement, the panic set in. Like, oh my God, I'm going to have an infant. How am I going to do this? And there wasn't that many resources to find about moms who had done this. So I was left scrambling, and I don't know how I did it. I recall days of sleeping on the floor in the lounge I used for nursing between my 30 minutes between classes, the hard, cold floor. And I actually went back to school when my son was only 3 weeks old. And my husband was in the military at the time, and he had to go away for training. So he left when the baby was 8 weeks old. or 6 weeks old, until mid-March. So it was just me.
Wow.
Yeah. And at the time, I had just gotten into immigration law, and that was when all the immigration changes started, January 2017. It was chaotic,
to say the least.
Yeah. So advice-wise, I maybe plan it better, but you can't always.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really hard to condense it into words how hard it was, but at the same time, coming away, it conditioned me for beyond law school. And it also grounded me in knowing that it's not just about grades. It's not just about law review. There's other people on the other side of this that need help. So I think focusing on the ultimate end goal is a good way to get through. On my personal Facebook and my Instagram, I am very candidly honest about my trials and tribulations. When I failed the bar exam, I was out front about it. I was like, I was only a couple points away. I didn't make it, but you know what? I'm going to own that because you don't ever hear about it. And so it was more about just telling my personal story as it was happening. And then I started writing articles like the Above the Law article that we had discussed before called A Better Way, how pregnancy changed my outlook on the legal profession and what I'm doing about it. Because my post-law school experience was not as generous as my law school experience.
Tell us about that. What do you mean?
It was really difficult. On top of all of the things I was doing, I decided I was going to do something that they had in New York called the Pro Bono Scholar Program, and I was going to take the bar early before graduating. Yeah, so that was a great idea because I can do all of the things. So I had a 1-year-old trying to study for the bar, still in school, and I took the bar in February. And I was on top of the world, thinking like, this is it. I'm going to get sworn in after I graduate. This is going to be amazing. I found out a month later that I was pregnant with my second child. Very big surprise. So I was a bit shell-shocked. And then I got the bar results very shortly after that. And I was crushed. It became an issue of not only figuring out my next move with the bar, but finding employment while I have a growing belly. That was where I was the most naive. I really believed that my credentials would outshine my appearance. And they were until I was there in person. Mm-hmm. And then interviewers, their eyes would fall to my stomach. Suddenly they were going in a different direction, or they'd get back to me. They never got back to me.
That sucks.
When I was 30 weeks pregnant, I found a position at a local family law firm. And at first it seemed promising. It wasn't quite the area I wanted to be in, but it was good experience. And then after I returned from having my second child, it was not a good experience. It was really hostile and it was unwelcoming. And I only lasted a few more weeks because come to find out, the week I returned from maternity leave, they had started advertising for my position behind my back. Didn't find out until I was unceremoniously dismissed on a Friday afternoon. And an hour later, I'm looking for a job and I see my position posted that week.
Oh my gosh.
I was crushed and I didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, financially, that's devastating. 2 kids, my husband was working, but it wasn't enough to carry everything. And that is how I started doing services for other attorneys to get by.
Smart.
It was innovation out of necessity.
Here's what I appreciate. Well, first of all, here's what I don't appreciate. The jerks that did that to you.
All woman firm.
Yeah, and I was going to say, it doesn't have to necessarily, it's so funny. I was just talking to a woman this morning, and she said to me, I said, I started my career at such and such law firm 20 years ago. She said, oh, do you know so-and-so? A friend of hers, a woman. And she said this person's name, and I said, yeah, I do. And I did not cringe when you brought her name from the back of my mind to the front, because when I was at that law firm, my worst experience in interpersonal relationships was with women. They were so mean to me. And, I was 20-something years old. I just wanted to help. I was energetic. I knew something they didn't know about computers. And at this particular firm, which was very toxic, and not only did I suffer a little bit, and not really, they were just mean girls, big deal, but I watched these associates just get pushed and crushed, and the expectations set upon them were they were terrible. And I was in my 20s and I was young and dumb, and I thought, ooh, who would want to be a lawyer under these circumstances? Now, I went to a different firm later and it was very different. So there's definitely something to be said about the culture in the law firm. And since then, I've been in hundreds of firms where, the experience runs the gamut. But anyway, long story short, it's not always the men that do that to women. And I think that's really disheartening. I mean, it's disheartening as it is, but this makes it even worse.
Yeah, I agree. I had expected more support because most of them had children. And then, like you were saying, the expectations that were set up were not realistic. I was getting told to put my 6-week-old to bed and drive back to the firm. I was more than willing to sit and work at my kitchen table. I never shied away from that, but I had to stop nursing because I didn't have enough time to pump and I was losing my supply. And, it was the lack of support and the fact that this is normalized that really bothered me.
That's really hard. And it's really hard to live through that when you can do something about it. So you did something about it.
I did. So I discovered, that there was ways to do contract work for other attorneys. And it wasn't even something that I had considered as an avenue before, but I had heard other attorneys looking for brief writers. So I started doing that and I started getting myself on Facebook groups and, passing my information around and using lawclerk.legal.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was a great way for me to get some really in-depth writing experience too and not have the pressure of dealing with the caseload.
Okay, so you started with lawclerk.legal and then that still wasn't enough for you.
No, it wasn't. So here I am raising babies, a house, animals, a husband, and bringing in brief work. And then I started to get this itch because I didn't like the way people ran their cases. So that's how I accidentally stumbled into legal tech because I knew that there had to be a more efficient way to get this stuff done.
Awesome. And they didn't teach you in law school.
Exactly. They don't teach you in law school. These are essential skills that are coming to be necessary in the modern law practice. But we're still practicing in the 19th century in some places. So I got this itch and I didn't like the way cases were handled. So I started diving in and learning about startups and all of these different project management softwares. And it just kind of grew from there. So then I started offering assistance with project management and streamlining. I was like, if I'm setting this up for other people, I should be setting this up for myself too. So I set a goal, and I set the goal actually long before COVID. I wanted a virtual practice because I never wanted to have to choose between my children and my job again.
Awesome.
Well, I was ahead of the curve because then COVID hit and everything went virtual. I thought that was pretty awesome, except there was a lot of bumps in the road trying to figure out other logistics to it, like mail and all of these things that didn't occur to me at the time. So I dove in even further and started looking into different services and other types of software offered. And I just saw this entire universe of options, not only just with software and technology, but ways to practice law. So I set the goal. It was in March 2020. I was going to open up a firm and have it ready to go by October. And I did.
Why did you, and I meant to ask you this earlier, so sorry to go backwards. Why did you choose immigration law?
Oh, okay. So I'll try to make this one quick. Because I had found out that I was pregnant in my first year of law school, I had to have this purpose to continue because I was about to become a mom and that was supposed to be a big part of my life. So I had gone into law school years thinking I was going to be a prosecutor. I mean, I'm talking like since I was 13 years old. This was the plan. And I used to have names of law schools pinned up on my bedroom wall. I was a very nerdy teenager with a big ambition. So I start interning at the DA's office. Be still my heart. Oh my gosh, I can't stand it. Oh, this is not for me. I felt awful being in the courtroom, seeing people in shackles, feeling like I was contributing to mass incarceration. The systemic racism that I witnessed was mind-blowing, stuff that I didn't anticipate. And so I was like, oh no, I don't know what I'm going to do now. I got to figure this out because I got a baby coming and law school is really expensive. So I spoke with a mentor who mentioned a local nonprofit, and they have two fellowships there. And the only way to get into it is through two of the school's legal clinics, which was the domestic violence clinic and the immigration law clinic. I am a domestic violence survivor, so that was a bit triggering to me, and I kind of shied away from it. And then I was like, oh, immigration sounds happy. I want to know, this was August 2016. I was very naive, and I reached out to the professor of the clinic to get in touch with her about the spring semester. Well, it just so happened that right then a spot had opened up because somebody had dropped the class. So she said, "It's yours if you want it." And I was sworn into the clinic with my hand on my belly and my right hand in the air 3 weeks later. I fell in love.
Oh,
I absolutely fell in love. I was working on a special immigrant juvenile status case for a kid that came from Guatemala. He didn't have a mailing address. There's no running water. There's no electricity. It took my heart. And then there was a bond hearing. I actually ended up on bed rest right in the very beginning of November. I still continued my classes on the computer, and I participated through Skype. And I worked on a bond hearing with my partner that was done like while I was on bed rest. And I just couldn't get enough of it. I don't know what it was about that particular area of law, but then when the election happened, I knew what that meant for immigration, and it broke my heart. I had to stop watching the election because it was causing me to have contractions. I'm not even kidding. I think
I understand.
It's a little extreme, but like the stress I was feeling, it wasn't even about me. It was thinking about my clients and what they were going to endure. And so I hadn't signed up for the clinic for the following semester. I had been invited back to do the second part, which is invitation only, but I decided not to because I had a new baby. And I was going to do an immigration law class instead so I could learn, but I still couldn't get enough. So we had a Capital Region Immigration Coalition meeting. I was pumping as I was driving. I mean, like I said, my son was only a couple weeks old.
Wow.
And this was when the Muslim ban was coming down and all of these things were happening. So I knew that I was not going to take much time off. And I ended up applying for the immigration fellowship at that nonprofit. And in February, they told me it was mine. I worked there that entire summer. I stayed there. I went back to the immigration clinic. And by the time I graduated, I had over 1,300 hours of pro bono service.
And that pro bono service that you loved.
Yes.
CallRail helps law firms stop losing clients to missed calls. Did you know 28% of calls go unanswered? That's missed revenue and new business handed straight to your competition. Now there's Voice Assist by CallRail, the first AI phone agent trained on over 1 million calls. With Voice Assist built into CallRail's lead intelligence platform, your law firm can attract, capture, and convert leads, even when you can't get to the phone the first time. Try CallRail's full lead engagement platform free at callrail.com/newsolo. Tomorrow's a mystery, but your coverage doesn't have to be. At ALPS Insurance Agency, they believe that proper planning prevents poor performance. Say that 5 times fast. Endorsed by bar associations throughout the country, they're a one-stop shop for solo lawyers and small firms. Turn uncertainty into security with tailored, comprehensive business and malpractice insurance solutions. As the nation's leader for solo and small firms, ALPS makes it quick and easy to protect your practice. Learn more at alpsinsurance.com. Okay, we're back, and I'm speaking to Kim Felton, who, in our first segment, we sort of rolled through her journey of going through law school, pregnant, and then trying to work and get a job, being pregnant. And then she got the entrepreneurial itch, which I love that you got. A lot of lawyers don't get the entrepreneurial itch, and that's okay. So we left off where you were discovering legal technology and the efficiencies that technology, and specifically legal technology, might bring to a practice, and you saw a better way. You saw a better way to run your own life and then your practice. And is this where innovation litigation comes in?
So innovation litigation stemmed from the contract work I was doing. I wanted to do an LLC just to formalize it. But then, yes, that's where I started thinking about other things I could do with it, because I still do contract work. I love brief writing. Some people think there's something wrong with me. I love doing a 25-page asylum brief when it's not my case. But then I also was thinking about how other attorneys and other moms specifically can benefit from my experiences. So with innovation litigation, I'm starting to change it, not just to being about outsourcing contract work, but about bringing me in to revamp the system and figure out how they can have, everybody wants to have it all, but it's hard to have it all. So you have to be able to have it in good increments. So I want to be able to show them you can have the life you love and the job you love, and you don't have to sacrifice for it.
I think that's really important because so many people do sacrifice one thing or another. So innovation litigation is two things then. Let me make sure I understand. It's a platform for other attorneys who do immigration law to find contracted work. And it's a consulting service that you run to help other lawyers be more efficient, find life balance, and use technology better.
Yes, I can either offer them that balance by doing the brief work for them, or I can show them how to build that balance in themselves.
So when somebody calls you up and says, help me, I'm drowning, where do you start?
Well, what is the most urgent thing and what is the most important thing that we need to address first and foremost? What is an upcoming deadline? What is something you need to get out of the way right now? And then the rest of it we can figure out step by step. I always had this high expectation for the legal profession and lawyers, and then seeing the chaos and the lack of structure and even accountability, it was really disheartening for me. And that was, that's why I was like, I need to open my own firm because these immigration clients are not getting the service that they're paying for. It was seeing unethical practices of other attorneys that really pushed me and feeling like I was powerless. The best I could do was work harder on the casework that was sent to me on an appeal than they did for the original petition. I wouldn't have to do this work if it was done right the first time, but I was able to help in some way. I think that because the law profession is stuck behind the times, this progress is so slow, and that is why lawyers have a bad rap. People are paying for the hourly model, but it's not efficient. It doesn't promote efficiency.
It doesn't. Talk to me about project management. That's something we don't talk enough about. What does that mean to you when it comes to managing a case? Because I think a lot of attorneys don't think about a case as a project, therefore don't apply principles of project management to doing that. So when somebody says to you, I think I need project management, but is that the same as case management? What do you say to them and how do you help them?
Yeah, I mean, it is the same thing. The terms can be synonymous, but I think when you mention project management, it's more granular. It forces you actually to do it step by step and to draw out the entire roadmap and see how you're going to get there. What things do we have to do along the way? When do they have to be done and why? And it's a really good way. I think it's a great way for younger attorneys to really get an understanding of a case too, by not just, plugging everything into Clio and then referencing the notes, but all right, so we have this legal problem. When is the next filing deadline? What do we need to have done by then? What do I need to complete before the filing deadline so I'm not scrambling the night before to meet the filing deadline? So when it comes to project management, I'm not really partial to any kind of way or tool. I think as long as you can figure out something that works for you. I mean, I started off using sticky notes on my wall and doing a Kanban board. And I love that. I love the Kanban board because I can see everything that's going on in one place, but it doesn't necessarily work for other people. It could be a spreadsheet, it could be a running list, but project management is something we do every single day, and people don't realize it.
They don't. I'll say real quick too, I'll add on this. I had a client who had me create some workflows for them in Clio. And what was great about the workflow when he gave it to me, he said, okay, here are the steps and here are the paralegal steps and then here's the attorney steps. But he had really taken the time to put into the workflow why, which is something you said, and I think that's important to address, which is a project management system can be used like a knowledge management system where you're teaching someone why something needs to get done so that the next time something similar comes up, they've got some information in their head that they can apply to either solve a problem or, redo something the right way. So it was really neat how it wasn't just this task is due in 3 days. This task is due in 3 days because if we don't contact this potential new client within 3 days, which that's way too long, but we might lose the opportunity to service that client. So he actually had not just the sales and marketing part of the project, but also at some point he dug into the legal reasons, and this was a family law lawyer. The other thing I will add that I like about Clio, and I think it's any case management system that has calendaring rules in it, again, sort of teaching, when you use their court rules, it tells you it lays out the rule. It doesn't just say, okay, that's due 6 days before the deadline. It tells you why and what and how. And so I think that's another important part, like you said, of why. And I think that's a big piece that we miss out on training ourselves and attorneys or someone else.
Absolutely.
Is why are we doing this? And I think that's a really good case for thinking about cases more like a project than just, a linear process to get from cradle to grave.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the brief writing, that was just a small portion of an entire project. But for me, that was my project. That's my portion that I control. Somebody else isn't going to. So they need to know where I'm at that time to be able to figure out where they're going next. And so by breaking it down, and, I'm a very visual person, so I need to be able to see things. And the why part ingrains it. It makes you know and understand it. And then you take it more seriously and you're more accountable, I think.
Let's face it, you didn't become a lawyer to stress over summaries and analysis. You could hand it off, but you need an assistant you can trust. Co-Counsel handles those important but tedious tasks that keep you from being a lawyer. And because it's trained only on expert legal content from Thomson Reuters, it's as precise as you are, which means less stress and more confidence to focus on what matters. Head to tr.com/co-counsel to discover AI that lawyers swear by.
Hey, is this thing on?
Let the roasting commence.
Your law firm's website is so outdated, I half expected to hear a dial-up modem sound.
Yeah, no kidding. And nothing screams trustworthy like a stock photo of two random old men shaking hands. How authentic.
Oh, cool. And here's a pop-up. I can't see anything. And a chatbot asking if I need legal help? No, thanks. What I need is help escaping your website.
Hey, Guy, that poor underpaid intake person. Can't be any worse, right? Right?